Hey, coming to you from somewhere in Sao Paulo, and to tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea where I'm coming from. I'm completely lost. So I thought, oh, must be time to make a video. And boy, did I luck out. I stepped into a local establishment, got myself a drink, and just as I did, this huge rainstorm burst out outside. So if I had waited another 5 minutes, I'd be drenched right now trying to find a doorway to crawl into. All right, well, what I want to talk to you about today is your basic introduction to information. And this introduction that I give you today ought to suffice really for most of what we want to do during this course. So I want to give you some basic concepts of information, or at least my variety of information, what I tend to think of information, that'll help you through the rest of the course in order to understand the rest of what we talk about when we talk about information. Okay, so let me give you a very simple definition, the one that we'll work with for the rest of this class. Nothing complicated at all. Information is the stuff you want to consume. The books, the music, the video, the sound, all those different things, the web pages, the blogs, the Wikipedia articles, the Facebook profiles, all the stuff that you want to consume is information. And that's really as far as I want to go with it. I don't want to differentiate it too much from data. We're going to overlap those things a lot. If you take other courses in information science, you'll get a whole lot more detail about this. But I want to give you a simple idea, and one that you can use for really the rest of your life if you never study this further, in order to understand what's going on with information. All right, so the definition I've given you is a really simple one. It's the stuff that we consume. This video, for example, is information. So not too hard to understand. Now I want to go deeper, and I want to give you some concepts within information that we'll use a lot throughout the rest of the course. And the first concept is a type of information, a kind of information, a variety of information, of one sort of information. Or on Facebook, for example, the main sort of information, the main kind, the main variety of information that they're concerned with is a person, right? A person is the main type of information on Facebook, and most of what goes on in Facebook concerns people and the interactions between people. But Facebook doesn't only concern people. For example, Facebook has events. Facebook has locations. Facebook even has, if you remember what Greg Badra says, Facebook even has something called tennis is a kind of information on Facebook. So concept number one. Well, did you hear that crack of thunder? It's a real blazing storm out there. Concept number one, an information type. Concept number two, these types have attributes. When I have a kind of information like a person, there are certain things that it has to have in order for me to call it a person. For example, on Facebook, we have your name, we have your address possibly, we have your hometown, we have your sex, male or female, we have your birthday, we have all these things that you fill out in your profile, which are all the attributes about you that mean that that piece of information that you're creating there is a person. So we have the idea of an information type, which is like a person on Facebook or other kinds of information, other things on other systems. But on Facebook, the main one is a person. And then those types have attributes. So for example, people have names, addresses, email addresses, excuse me, birthdays, etc., etc. And some of those are mandatory, you have to have them, and some of them are optional. Okay, concept number one, information type. Concept number two, types have attributes. Concept number three, attributes have values. The attribute is name. The value is Bob Boyko. That value has a certain form. I can't type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the name because that's not a name. That's a number. Pasa. Instead, I have to type a name. Or birth date can't be Bob Boyko. It has to be a date. So we have the idea that information is broken into types. Those types have attributes like name, address, phone number, birthday, city of residence, sex, etc., etc. And those types and those attributes have values. The sex can be male, female, maybe you allow another. The name has to be a valid name. The birthday has to be a date, etc., etc. There are values, and the values are the things that go in the attributes. Types, attributes, values. The final big concept is the idea of an information item. Pasa. The information item is the set of values. So if we looked at all the values that are in my profile in Facebook, It would say Bob Boyko, here's his date of birth, here's his city, etc., etc. Here are all his interests, all the things he's liked, all the status updates he's posted, etc., etc. Right? That would be all the attributes of Bob Boyko on Facebook. Information type, person, attribute, name, value, Bob Boyko. The item is all of the values that are me, all linked together, if you remember from previous lectures, all linked together by an ID. My ID groups all of those together into an item. The item of information is all of the values all grouped together under me. Now, how many items of type person are there on Facebook? Well, we know that there are about 700 million items of type person on Facebook. In other words, 700 million people on Facebook. $700 million items of type person. All of those items has certain mandatory attributes. Mandatory attribute, for example, might be a username on Facebook. The username, therefore, there are 700 million usernames on Facebook. Birthday, on the other hand, is an optional attribute. Maybe there's only 100 million birthdays on Facebook because a lot of people don't fill it in. However, the item of information contains all of those attributes, whether they're filled in or not. So an item of information on Facebook has all of these attributes. Some of them are filled in, some of them aren't filled in. Okay. Type of information, person, attribute, name, value, Bob Boyko, item, my name, Bob Boyko, my address, my city, my, everything else that I type into Facebook, all bundled together, all linked together by my user ID. Got that? All right, now let's move on to the second major thing that I want you to understand about information. Information has a life cycle. In fact, information items are the thing that has a life cycle. The first thing that happens in the life cycle of an information item is it's created. The last thing that happens in the life cycle of an item of information is it's somehow retired, deleted, or put off to the side, excuse me, whatever. So let's go through that life cycle. But I want you to understand that the life cycle of information is the life cycle of an item. The type of information and the attributes and all that stuff pretty much is created once, right? Facebook defines all that stuff. Maybe it updates it every once in a while, but it changes relatively slowly, and there's only one of them. There's one type called person, but that person has hundreds of millions of items, and each of those items goes through this life cycle. First stage is creation, second stage is storage, third stage is organization, fourth stage is display, fifth stage is retirement. Let's go through each of those stages in turn and talk a little bit more about them. Stage number one, creation. In general, when you create an item of information in a system, there are two ways to do it. One is to type it in from scratch, like a human being goes in there and keys in all the information. That's how it happens on Facebook. But another big way that happens very often, that I don't know if we'll talk about it much later in the class, but the other way that it happens is it's gotten from somewhere, it's acquired. It's brought in from somewhere else. An example might be when you use the registration system at the University of Washington. That registration system gets all the information it needs about you, the user, one item of information in the registration system, from another database where it was already keyed in somewhere else, right? They don't key in your name just because it's the registration system. They acquire your name from somewhere else. Okay, so when information is created, it can be either authored from scratch or acquired. In Facebook, as I said before, it's authored from scratch. In fact, it's authored from scratch by you. You fill in your user profile. You type in a user ID, you type in a password, you type in a hometown, whatever else it is you type in. You type in a bunch of status updates, you upload pictures, you upload videos, you like things, you comment on other people's walls. All those things are part of one item of information called a person. That's you. So that's a very complicated item. It's got a lot of stuff in it, but it's created by you. You fill it in. Nice for Facebook because they don't have to spend a lot of effort creating information. For other organizations, it's huge. It's maybe the major expense they have, creating information. Creating information is expensive. Think of how much time you've taken to create all the information that you put on Facebook. Imagine if they had to do that for 700 million people. No way. They'd go out of business. Way too expensive. So, information is created, and on Facebook in particular, the way it's created is by you. It's authored from scratch into web forms, and those web forms then are brought into the next stage, which is storage. Information is created on Facebook, created by you. Information is stored. In general, how information is stored is in a database. Now Facebook uses something, I think they call it the info store, or the data store, I can't remember, everybody's got a different name for these things. But it functions pretty much like a database. And the easiest way to understand a database, I'll talk in more detail about databases later in the course, but the easiest way to think about a database is it's a lot like Microsoft Excel, or even just a table that you might type into Microsoft Word. So in Excel, and I'm hoping that you've all used Excel. If you haven't, now would be a good time to open up Excel and look around. In Excel or any spreadsheet program, you have tables. Those tables have names, tables have columns, and the tables have rows, right? Hopefully you're familiar with that. Hopefully you've done this one or more times. You open up a spreadsheet program, you type in a name for your table, you type in names for all the columns, and then you type in data in all the rows, right? So let's now go back to my definition of information itself and talk about it in terms of the database. If a database is a place to store information, it better store all those things that I talked about before: types, items, attributes, values. It better store all those things. If you look at this diagram, you'll see a place for all of those different concepts that I described earlier, starting with the information type. Notice that this table, which by the way I didn't take from Excel, I probably should have just to make it simple on you. I took this from a database program called Access, which you very likely also have on your hard drive, which you can play around with as well. But notice the table has a name. The name is called people. It's the people table. The name of the table is the information type. That makes sense because I'm going to store all the items of information type people all in the same place, all in the same table. So I have a table, the table is named people, and that's the information type. Now look at all the column names. All those column names are attributes. I have a set of attributes for each person, and those attributes are all in the columns. So for each person in my people table, is that what I called it? People? Yep, in the people table, I have attributes. The attributes are the column names. Now look at those rows. Those rows are sets of values. So I have a value under name, a value under address, a value under sex, a value under this, a value under that, etc., etc. All the values, all the actual things that got typed. If this is Facebook, who typed all that stuff? Remember? You typed it, right? And Facebook stored it here in their database, in this simple view of the database. Know that Facebook's database is way more complicated than this. But you typed it in, Facebook stored it in its database, and it stored all the values that you typed in to all the attributes. Now look at a row as a whole. Scan your eyes across one of the rows on this spreadsheet here, in this table here, and you'll see an item. That's one item of information. How many rows would this have if it was the real database inside of Facebook? 700 million. There would be 700 million rows of information all typed in by whoever created that user in the first place. Okay, so we have information type, that's the name of the table. The attributes, those are the column headings. The values that are in the cells that somebody typed in, and in the case of Facebook, you typed them in. And then the rows of the table, the rows of the spreadsheet, that are the information items. Okay, now back to the life cycle. Information is created. You type it into some form on Facebook. Information is stored in a database just like this, stored in a database just like this. And now let's go on to the next part of the life cycle where information is organized. So if I had a table and that table had 700 rows, and every time I wanted to get to a person, I had to like look in those 700 rows randomly, excuse me, to try and find the person, that'd be pretty tough, right? No way could I get to information about a person that way. Instead, the information is organized, and by being organized, we can get to it. Big way we organize information, first big way we organize information is by indexes. Indexes, which we'll talk a lot more about when we talk about Google. Indexes are alphabetical and sometimes numerically sorted lists of names, right? And you can totally understand this for people's names. If I wanted to allow you to get to a person's name, how would I organize all the people? Alphabetically by name, right? Assuming you know this person, you know their name, and so I'm going to organize it alphabetically. Now, interestingly, do I organize it alphabetically by their first name or by their last name? In different systems, you see them doing different things. Sometimes they organize it alphabetically by their last name. More generally and more recently, they've been organizing it alphabetically by first name because that's kind of how we think about it. Bob Boyko, look under Bob, right? Not look under Boyko, comma, Bob. The older way, and really sort of the more kind of official way to do it, is to alphabetize them by last name. The more common and newer way really is to alphabetize it by first name. At any rate, we're in the third stage of the life cycle of an item of information. It's been created, it's been stored, now it has to be organized. First major way to organize it is alphabetically or numerically. I can organize them by age, for example, or birthday, right? That would be a numeric organization, but that's called an index. Second way to organize the information is by linking it to other pieces of information. How do you find friends on Facebook? You usually click to them from some list of links, right? Not necessarily an alphabetical list, we'll talk about that later, but when you and someone else become a friend on Facebook, a link is created, an association is created between you and that other person, and that helps to organize the information because it allows you to get from person to person to person. And in fact, the social graph that I showed you earlier on in a previous lecture, that social graph is no more than a collection of all the links between all the people in your social network. And so all the links between all the people in your social network are brought together in one Mondo diagram, in one giant diagram, and that diagram is called a social graph, and it's no more than organizing all those people by those links, those friend links. Okay, major way of organizing people, major way of organizing items of information number one is indexes. Major way number two is links. Major way number three is sequences. I can put those friends in some order, where I want you to look at the one at the front of the list first, and then the next one, the next one, the next one. Like, for example, look at your friend list on Facebook. Your friend list is not an alphabetical list of friends, and to tell you the truth, I have no idea how they choose which one goes on top. But I gotta assume that the one on top is the one that's like most important, the one you're supposed to look at first, right? When you go down that friend list, you're supposed to look at it from the top down. I gotta guess that it has something to do with the one with whom you've had the most interaction, but that hasn't really played out for my friend list. So I'm going to have to ask somebody about that. How is it that they order that friend list? But in any case, it is ordered, and it's not ordered alphabetically. It's ordered in the order that they think you want to see them, that you should look at them, that you should consume them. First one, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. The results list on Google is ordered similarly. The top result is the one you're supposed to look at first. We call those sequences. Those results are listed in a sequence. Your friend list is listed in a sequence from the one you should look at first to the one presumably you care about the least, which is at the very bottom of the list. Information items organized by index, information items organized by links, information items organized by sequences, and information items organized finally by hierarchies or outlines. A family tree, for example, is an outline. In the example I have here, you can see Abe is the granddad, Bob is the dad, Kraz and Deb are the kids. Right? So we have this outline. Underneath, each one is a child, each one is one level down from the other. And like a table of contents of a book, organizes things by outline or hierarchically. Okay, life cycle of information. We start with creation. We then go into storage. We then go into organization. The information is organized according to one of these four methods or some combination of the methods, some hybrid that has more than one method in it. And now on to the next life cycle stage. Information is created. Information is stored, information is organized, information is then displayed. What's the point of collecting up all this information and storing it in this database if we don't ever use it? When I use information, I use it by displaying it. I give it back to people in some form that I think they're going to want to see it. Now notice the difference between the two views of the information here. One is the database view, and the other one is the display. And in fact, it's just a screenshot of a display of my profile from Facebook. In the database, the only things that are stored are the values. In the display, those values are interleaved with all sorts of other information that lets you know what value is this? What relationship does it have to the other thing? It also puts a look and feel, some formatting around those values in order to make it more usable and more attractive. It can turn some of the values into hyperlinks if it wants. The name of a friend of yours can be turned into a hyperlink so that you can click on it and go to their profile. Okay, so here's the display of information. A couple of more things to understand about this display. One is that the same piece of information can be used twice. Now you notice that the address attribute in the database is actually in two separate places on the screen. That's okay, right? I pull it out of the database and I put it in two separate places. Notice also that there are other values, like for example the birthday, that doesn't happen to be displayed anywhere on the screen. So when I display information, I choose some set of the attributes of an item of that information and I put them on the screen. I can put them on the screen twice. I don't have to put them on the screen at all. And I can choose how to format them, how to make them look so that they're as useful to the user as possible. Notice the name attribute is big and bold. but the address attribute is in smaller font and as is in some kind of table with certain labels. Okay, that's the display of information. Information is created, information is stored, information is organized, information is displayed, and it stays in that display stage for a long time. You know, as long as your profile is available on Facebook, your profile is being displayed, even if you no longer update it. And by the way, if you update it, it's kind of going through that same cycle again, right? It's being new creation, being stored again inside of your database record, your information item inside of Facebook, and it's being displayed. And then finally, at some point in time, maybe in the very distant future, an information item is retired. It's retired in one of two ways. It's either deleted or it's archived. If it's deleted, it's gone poof. If it's archived, it's moved off to the side for possible later use of some sort, right? So on your hard drive, you can hit the delete button, and that means it's gone, goodbye, I never want to see it again. And then you can move it off to some other folder where, you know, you don't have to look at it, but it's still there if you really need it. That's archiving it. On Facebook, you have both of those options. You can archive your profile, which says retire. It's like make it inactive, I think they call it on Facebook. Inactivate my profile, which means it's still there waiting, and if you come back later, you can activate it again, but it won't show up in any displays. That's the idea, right? It's taken out of service. Active information is being displayed all the time. Inactive information or retired information is off to the side. If I want to display it, I can make it active again, or I can just keep it in retirement forever. That's what Facebook would hope that you do, so that they can continue using your information even though you're not displaying it anymore. But Facebook now does have the option, didn't always have the option, but it does have the option now to completely delete your information. Facebook gave you that option because people got really mad. How dare you not allow me to get rid of my profile? How dare you keep stuff around when it's deleted? I want to end this segment about the life cycle with just one more note about deletion. When is something really, really, really deleted? The answer is maybe never. And if it ever is, you're not going to know that it was ever completely deleted. So let me give you this example and show you how deletion is in the eye of the beholder. So I go to Facebook and I say delete my profile, and I click OK. I go through all the things. You sure? Are you absolutely sure? Are you totally absolutely sure? This will never come back again. I say yes, 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 delete, 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 delete. I go about my merry way after that thinking, okay, done with that. Everything I ever put on Facebook is now gone, goodbye, kapoof. Well, not exactly. First of all, just because you said delete on that page doesn't mean it immediately gets out of all the Facebook systems. Facebook does, I'm assured, their best to delete it eventually from everywhere that it exists on Facebook, but that takes a while, right? There's all the Facebook backups, there's all the different places where it resides. It really takes a while for that deletion to move its way through the system so that Facebook says, okay, finally gone, as far as we know, that profile is deleted. But somebody yesterday before I deleted my profile, downloaded one of the pictures that I put on Facebook. Now, Facebook can't delete their download of it. Not only did they download it, but they posted it on Flickr, right? And now it's in the Flickr system, and you get my idea, right? Stuff can easily proliferate from one place to another. Or some application that was running on Facebook, Farmville or something else, right? Gets a hold of your user information, and they do something with your information, and they put it in their servers, and maybe according to their contract with Facebook, they have to delete it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they say they delete it, but they forget. Maybe they say they delete it, but they really don't want to. Maybe they say they delete it, but their deletions aren't exactly as good as they think they are. Maybe they went ahead and sold your information a long time ago to somebody else. You see what I'm getting at, right? You hit the delete button, but you don't know where it was in the first place before you said you were going to delete it, so you have no possibility of knowing exactly when it's going to be deleted. Understand that about retirement. Understand that just because you think it's retired or deleted, it's not necessarily. Okay, so let me summarize where we've been here. I've tried to give you a basic idea, basic understanding of an easy concept of information. Information comes in types, like people on Facebook. Those types have attributes, like the name attribute. The attributes have values, like Bob Boyko. Those values come in certain varieties. Bob Boyko is a name. Date of birth is a date. Age is a number, right? Those values have different types, we call them. Then we have the idea of an information item, which groups together all the attributes for one person, all tied together by the ID of that person. In Facebook, it's your username, is your unique ID in Facebook. Then we have the idea of the cycle of information, or the life cycle of information that happens to an item of information. Remember, the life cycle doesn't happen to an information type, it happens to an information item. That life cycle has 700 million go-rounds on Facebook because there are 700 million people. And the life cycle starts with creation, where you fill in the item, where you fill in all the forms. It goes through storage, where that item is put into some form of database. On Facebook, I told you that's a complicated thing. It's not nearly as simple as what I showed you, but the concept is as simple. It's the concept of a place where all that information is nicely stored and organized. Organized by indexes, organized by links, organized in sequences, and organized into outlines or hierarchies. That information is then displayed on a screen. It's being used, it's being shown to people. People are doing things with it. That's usage of information. And then finally it's retired after some amount of time when somebody decides, and in Facebook that's you, decides that that should no longer be either visible to the public, brought off to the side. That's called archiving, or deleted entirely. That's the delete button. And the final point that I made in this lecture was that deletion is in the eye of the beholder. Just because you think it's deleted, just because Facebook thinks it's deleted, doesn't mean necessarily that it's deleted.